People have been asking me, Tyler, why are you so worried about Kamala Harris being elected president? After all, what's the worst that could happen? I gave it a lot of thought, and imagine this scenario. Democrats win the presidency and both houses of Congress. They then use their power to abolish the filibuster, allowing them to pack the Supreme Court, ensuring that Democratic policies can never be challenged by the judicial branch. Congress elevates D.C. and Puerto Rico to statehood, giving them an almost permanent majority in the Senate, which prevents Republicans from taking back any legislative power for a generation. This frustration about the overturning of decorum in the normal workings of our politics leads to a fierce Republican pushback against these underhanded tactics, and ultimately Texas tries to secede from the Union, and we wind up in a second civil war. So, no big deal. Democrats claim Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, but I see only one side attempting to upend the entire political order for their benefit. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Now, I'm looking at my calendar here. It's currently the 1st. We are getting ready to vote just this next week, a couple days from now. And it's a big deal because this is going to be our last episode prior to the election. Now, it's a big deal. Obviously, this is when we talk a lot about politics here on the Chrestman Conversation, politics, culture, philosophy, whatever we want. But we talk a lot about politics. We talk a lot about the day-to-day, the grind, the nonsense. And I have made it very clear, I think, at least, I would hope it'd be clear to you out there who are listening who I'm voting for. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. And this, if you would flash back to 2016, I wrote a lot about why I was voting for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump and what I thought about Donald Trump and what I thought about people who voted for Donald Trump. And it was not very flattering. And at the time, if I'm going to be charitable to myself, at the time, I would say there was a good argument against Donald Trump, because he had never been in office. You didn't know how he was going to govern. You didn't know what he was going to do. You didn't know if he was going to be a capable leader. And I felt like it was a good idea, a smart idea, to be wary of Donald Trump. And I very much was. I was very much against Donald Trump in 2016. I voted for him in 2020, and I'm going to vote for him again in 2024. Now, how did we get here is a great question. I know there are so many people like me out there. It's wild. The amount of people that I would call disaffected liberals, these people who got mugged by the left, are multiplying in a rate that I think the Democratic Party is eventually going to have a giant wake-up call about. These people who are in the moderate. I know, just off the top of my head, I know so many people who have never voted for a Republican who are voting Republican in this election. And to me, that's wild. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. But the other thing that I think Democrats are really taking for granted is their lock on the votes of minorities. Because some, or intersectional groups, I should say, really more than minorities, because I know people I have, and this is anecdotal. Obviously, this is all anecdotal because I'm talking about my personal experience. So it's not a great argument, but it is true when I look around and what I see. And what I see is I know some people who happen to be black who are going to vote Republican. I know I have a friend of mine who is gay, who is a very much a big leftist, like a big lib, who said to me that he was going to have to vote for Donald Trump. And I was shocked. I said I couldn't believe it, because this is a guy who, you go down your progressive bona fides, and he checks every box, and he has always been an ardent leftist. And he said he's going to vote for Donald Trump because he just doesn't see what the left is about anymore. And this is what happened. It's not that people say that I've changed. I remember you flash back 10 years ago, and people used to criticize me online because I would criticize Republicans and I would criticize the right. And I've always been rather vocal about what I believe. And I had a bunch of criticisms, and people say I've changed. And it's true that I have changed, but I haven't changed that much. Most of the things that were really important to me 10 years ago that I believed when I was a liberal are still very important to me. The number one concern that I had, go back to when I started the Chrestman Conversation in the first place, the number one concern that I had was about free speech. It's my number one issue, is free speech. And I look around, and at the time, I thought that the left was for free speech. And then what I saw was that they were the ones who were doing things that I didn't care for. They were the ones who were doing things like trying to censor online content that they didn't agree with, trying to silence what they call quote unquote hate speech, which is really just critical speech that they don't enjoy. And I think some speech is hateful, but I don't think it's illegal for hate speech to be a thing. It's not. Texas first Johnson 1989 showed us that the Supreme Court ruled that offensive speech, such as hate speech, is not illegal in the United States. It does not violate laws. You can't threaten people, but hate speech is not a thing. So, but they use this misinformation, disinformation, hate speech. They use this stuff to try and censor people online. So I looked at the left and I said, well, I thought you were the guys who were for free speech, but you're not. I haven't changed. You changed. You are no longer the party of free speech. I looked at the left, and I always was very socially on the liberal side. I said, I'm for things like gay marriage. Always happened. When I was a kid, I had, he has unfortunately died since then, but I had a gay uncle who I love very much. I have a couple gay cousins. In my family, it was not a thing that we ever thought about. We never really thought about the fact that someone was gay, and it just seemed like a thing to me. So I've always been, my entire life, I was pro-gay marriage, and that was a big liberal issue. It's just this gay marriage versus traditional marriage, and it was a big thing. And I said, okay, I still believe that. I still believe if you're gay and you want to get married, if you can find a church. I don't think you should be able to force churches to marry people who are gay. You shouldn't be able to force people to practice against their religious beliefs. But if you can find people, if you want to have a civil union, if you want to have what you want to call a marriage, none of this bothers me. Live your life as long as you're not hurting other people. However, it's now gone farther. It's not about, we no longer argue about gay marriage. There's not I don't see a lot of Republicans talking about, we got to go back and outlaw gay marriage. It's not really a conversation on the table. But now the conversation about sexuality is all about are we going to chop the genitals off the youth? And I said, well, hold on here, because it used to be we were talking about the LGBT community. We were talking about gay rights. We're talking about the rights of gay people to live in society. You shouldn't be able to discriminate against someone based on their sexuality, bar them from your businesses, or prevent them from getting married. Like, these things made sense to me because you were saying, well, let's treat everyone equal, and I'm all for that. I think that everyone should have the same rights, and that's great. But now that the LGBT side of the liberal argument is about genital mutilation of children and whether we're going to give kids hormones and whether or not men should be able to say that they're women despite that they're 6'5" and can bench press 300 pounds, and whether they should be able to go play on the women's volleyball team in high school. And I say, well, how did this argument become that? Because, again, I haven't changed. I still have the same thought, which is that everyone deserves equal rights. But that includes women. And so when you say equal rights, I mean women should be able to play sports with women and men should be able to play sports with men, but men shouldn't be able to just go and dominate women's sports. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's actually equal for anyone. But then somehow I've changed. I'm now the bigot. And I go, well, how does this work? When did that happen? When did I all of a sudden, this guy who, my entire thing is I want everyone to be treated equally. When did that become, well, no, you're the bigot? I say, okay, but I haven't changed. The things I believed 10 years ago, I still believe that were leftist beliefs. And now I'm some big MAGA Republican. And it's the same with race. I have the same argument. I've always believed that people should be treated equally. They should have equal access under the law. This does not mean that everyone's going to wind up equal. It never meant that. But what it means is that the law doesn't discriminate. The law shouldn't discriminate white, black, brown. I wish I could remember the name of him off the top of my head. There's a philosopher who said, if you design a society, you should design a society as such that you could wind up any member of the society and you don't know who you're going to be. So what that means is if I was designing a society and I said, well, black people are going to be kept in slavery. Well, this would be a bad society because if I then am randomly dealt the card that says, okay, and now you have to go live the society in the role of a black person, I have just hurt myself because all of a sudden I said, oh, darn, I drew the black card. This is bad. And so what you do is I've always thought you want to design a society where you could be any race and you're not going to face any barriers to entry in terms of the law. You want the law to be you want everyone to be equal under the law. And in the United States, people don't like to acknowledge this, but we are equal under the law. There are no laws that specifically target black or white or Asian, and there's no laws that specifically do this since 1965. We really have gotten rid of all of the racist laws. That doesn't mean there's not discrepancies. It doesn't mean that people don't live differently. It doesn't mean that society doesn't play a factor, but this is where we're at. And so basically, I say, well, that's what I've always believed. I've always believed that everyone should be treated equal under the law. But the race conversation then became, well, the entire country is systemically racist. We have to tear down the system. And I said, well, I don't agree with that at all. But I haven't changed my belief on this. My belief has always been that everyone should be equal under the law, and that maybe that you have little spots that you could tweak, or maybe you find a person who's racist, or maybe you find something specific that you can point to and say, this is racist, we need to change it. And I would always be for you changing it. But then it became this conversation about, oh, the system needs to change. The entire thing needs to be brought down, and we need to do this, and police are systemically racist, and defund them, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I don't agree with any of this. But again, I didn't change. All of a sudden, that conversation began happening, and no longer was I on the left because I'm not for that conversation. So it was this weird thing that happened where I felt like I didn't change that much. I have changed on certain things. I used to believe more in big government, for example. I used to believe that the government had a role in things like healthcare, or that the tax policy should be more redistributive. And I used to believe these things, and I just don't anymore. So my beliefs did change. But on a lot of the things that I've always believed that used to be leftist thinking, or used to be people on the left, the liberal thinking, it's changed. It's not liberal thinking anymore. Free speech is not a leftist value. Liberals like free speech. Me, like a classic liberal, we like free speech. Leftists don't like free speech. And there's a distinct difference there that changed, because I still consider myself a liberal in certain senses of the word, and yet I'm not even close to center left anymore. I just am not. And so it's this weird thing that happened, but it's not us that have changed. It's not the people who are going to vote Republican for the first time who just decided that, oh, if I could go back, Reagan was the guy for me. That's not what's happening. It's not an alignment shift of core beliefs that has allowed this realignment in politics. It's the fact that the left has gone crazy. In the story, there was a story relayed to me actually last night that I thought was funny, where it was talking about, I was with a friend of mine, shout out to Jake, and we went out to a little Halloween thing. It was very fun, but he was telling me a story about a friend of his that said he's voting Republican for the first time. And again, it's this whole thing that this is a guy who never would vote Republican, and all of a sudden, I was surprised. I know the guy. I said, oh, wow, really? That really surprises me, knowing that this is the guy who kind of would scold you a little bit if you weren't woke enough, or has said some things that you go, oh, well, that's, I don't agree with that, but I'll just let it slide. And so to hear that he's going to vote for Donald Trump, this is a guy who, again, never voted Republican. Is it because he all of a sudden decided that he woke up one day and said he's a conservative? No, it's because he said, I don't understand the left. I don't understand this Hamas love, the love for these terrorist organizations. I don't understand how we think it's a good idea. He's in the medical field. I don't understand how we think it's a good idea to give puberty blockers to children. Like, there's no science that says that this is a good idea. And it's things like that that are going to be the downfall of the Democrats. And I think that this is what is really going to hinder Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is a failure in every aspect of the word. She just is. She is a bad politician. She doesn't think well on her feet. Her policies are a mess. She is for something one day, against it the other day. Her policies are just unclear. I've seen people try and defend this like it's not about policies. It should all be about policies. I do not care. You should not care about the personality of the candidate. What are they going to do? What have they done? What are they going to do? This is what matters in the election. Kamala Harris is a failure. Her administration, the Biden administration has failed. They have failed on the economy. We have the worst inflation in 40 years. That is a gigantic factor. They do not understand monetary policy. They believe that they believe in this new monetary theory that you can just pump money into the economy and spend, and it has no negative ramifications. They ran into a brick wall called inflation, which any classic economist of the Vienna School would have told you, hey, you cannot spend all of this money and expect not to superheat the economy and cause rapid inflation. And what did they do? They did the exact opposite of this, because this new monetary theory says that you can just spend money without consequences as government. You can just print more. This is what Joe Biden's economic advisor actually said. He said, we just print more money. Oh, that's the solution. That's why we have record inflation, because they don't understand the economy. She's been a failure on immigration. We have the worst illegal border crossings in years. And you say, oh, well, border crossings are down. Well, congratulations. They're down from whatever they were at the peak, 10,000 a day to 6,000 a day. That's ridiculous that's an accomplishment. These catch and release policies that she's had, this whole rejiggering of the asylum claim thing, that she allows anyone who claims asylum just to be granted asylum and released into the interior of the United States. All this stuff. 10 million people have crossed the border under Joe Biden. Is she doing a good job on immigration? Do you feel like immigration is really an issue that the Biden administration has thrived on? No. So they failed on the economy. They failed on the immigration. How about foreign policy? Do we remember Afghanistan? Do we remember the most embarrassing thing that's happened since Vietnam in the United States, the disastrous withdrawal and the weakness it showed on the world? Do we think that didn't lead to war in Ukraine? Do we think that Vladimir Putin didn't look at the feckless tiger that is the United States and then say, oh, Ukraine is now mine for the taking? Do we think that if Taiwan is attacked, it's not going to have something to do with the incompetence that the Biden administration and Kamala Harris have shown on their foreign policy front? They haven't done a good job with the Israel-Hamas war. They strengthened Iran. They gave $60 billion to Iran when they came into office. They tried to go back into the Iran deal. They put money in the Iran's coffers, which they then used for 2 years to fund Hamas so they could plan October 7th, and then they launched a gigantic war, which now they're trying to run away from. They caused the war in the Middle East. They caused the war in Ukraine. They're going to cause a war in Taiwan. Their failure on foreign policy is astounding. It does not make sense how someone could be this bad. So the economy, immigration, foreign policy, what are they doing well? What does Kamala Harris do well? Answer me that question. I don't know the answer. She is not good at her job. She's not good at anything. She has never been particularly impressive. She's never presented herself as particularly bright. I do not believe that she is capable of the job of the president. You might look at Donald Trump and you say, well, I think Donald Trump's an idiot. Okay, that's fine. You can think that. What did his administration do? That's the question. Was the economy good under Donald Trump? Oh, when Donald Trump's presidency ended, it was the worst. He did X, Y, and Z. Okay, for example, let's just ignore the COVID stuff. I'll say this. I didn't agree with many of Donald Trump's COVID policies, but everyone in the world in the beginning messed this up. Every single person. There is not, with the exception of possibly Sweden, every country in the world messed up their COVID policy. Let's look at the first 3 years. Let's ignore the global pandemic that no one in the world was prepared for. Let's talk about the first 3 years of Donald Trump's presidency. What did he do? Well, we talked about immigration. We talked about the economy. We talked about foreign policy. How about the economy? We had the best economy in the world, probably in history, under the first 3 years of Donald Trump. Okay. So the fact that he beats Kamala Harris and Joe Biden on the economy is not a big deal. How about immigration? We had the lowest numbers of immigration in 20 years since the George Bush presidency, and he did a pretty good job. I wouldn't say perfect. He did a good job. He was running to try and fix the problem at least. He built wall. He built 560 miles of wall along the border. There's things we need to do on the border that he didn't do, but certainly better than Biden and Kamala Harris. Absolutely not a question. Okay, so he's better on the economy. He's better on immigration. What about foreign policy? How about the first time Russia hasn't invaded a country in 20-something years? They invaded under Barack Obama. They were in Georgia. They were in Crimea. Then they invaded under Joe Biden. Russia didn't invade. Do we think that's because, it's because he was a stool pigeon he's a stoolie of Vladimir Putin there in his pocket? No. Do you think that if Donald Trump actually worked for Vladimir Putin wouldn't have attacked more? You think he was waiting for Donald Trump to be out of office before he attacked? It makes no sense. It's a stupid idea. No, he didn't attack because he thought that Donald Trump would go to war with him, and Donald Trump let him know he might. What about the Middle East? Iran was sanctioned so hard that they were hemorrhaging money, and people actually thought that the people of Iran might overthrow the government. Hamas had no money. Hezbollah had no money. Israel was safe. Israel, for the first time in 30 years, normalized relations with three Arab countries. The first time in 30 years, the Abraham Accords were a gigantic success. So peace in the Middle East, no Russian aggression. China was kept in check through all these tariffs that Donald Trump imposed on them. So Taiwan was safe. So on foreign policy, he's better. Foreign policy, immigration, the economy. What did the Trump administration do worse than the Biden administration? Donald Trump says stuff you don't like. I don't care. Personality means zero to me. I do not care. Oh, all you can point to is January 6th. January 6th, oh my God. Who cares? I don't care. I do not care about January 6th at all, period, end of story. I don't care. For the entire year before that, I had to watch Democrats burn down cities, and you want to talk to me about January 6th when a couple hundred people went into the Capitol. I don't care at all. I do not care. Democrats donned kente cloths and took a kneel in the Capitol Rotunda in support of riots across the country, and Donald Trump didn't what? He said, go peaceably protest, and then some people got out of hand, and he didn't do enough. He didn't. Like, what do you want him to do? Come out there and just on the steps and say, stop all this nonsense. Oh, he took too long to tweet, go home. Be real. Let's be serious. It's ridiculous. So I think that this, if you're being honest with yourself, this has to come down to who is going to policy-wise be better for the country. If you have a case for Kamala Harris's policies, make it. Show me where she outperformed Trump in the last 4 years. Show me where the Biden administration outperformed Trump in the last 4 years. And if you're going to say, well, Kamala Harris is different, where do her policies different than Joe Biden's? Because I don't know if you know this, when she finally was bullied into releasing her policies on her website, they were completely copy-pasted from Joe Biden's. They didn't even change the word Biden in some of the policies. So they're she copy-pasted Joe Biden's policies. There's nothing different that she's going to do that Joe Biden wouldn't have promised to do. Show me where she's different. Show me where her policies are better than Donald Trump's policies, and then you can make your case. I don't see where you can, and I feel like this is such an easy election to know who to vote for. And let's hope Donald Trump wins. Let's hope there's no shenanigans like 2020, and we'll see where we are on the next episode. That's really all I'm going to say about the presidential election. I am going to talk, so this last little bit is going to do a brief overview of the Missouri ballot, because I had some people ask me some questions about the Missouri ballot. So if you are not in Missouri, you're not going to vote in Missouri, this doesn't really apply to you, but I'm briefly going to go over some of the amendments that are on the Missouri ballot since most of my listeners are from Missouri, and I actually was asked a question. As I've always said, people, if you ask me to cover a topic on here, chances are I will do it. I don't get a ton of requests for specific topics, so if you have something in mind that you say, oh, you should do this or you should do that, as long as it's not a terrible, terrible suggestion, I will typically talk about it. So here we go. So let's go over just a couple of them. And it's going to be brief. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these because most of them are very straightforward. So in Missouri, we have Amendment 2. Amendment 2 is about sports legalization. I do not see a good argument against this amendment. So I believe a yes vote on this amendment would legalize sports betting in Missouri. Is anyone here Winnie? Come up here. Hold on. I'm going to grab her because she's just meowing like crazy. Driving me. Come here. Say hello. You say hello? Yep. Meow. There we go. She finally did it. She never wants to meow into the microphone. Okay. So Amendment 2 is sports legalization, sports gambling legalization in Missouri. I do not see a good argument against this. We do it there. It's in Illinois right now. So what most people are doing is, if you live on the border, is, for example, the Casino Queen is right across the street from me. I just drive to Illinois, do my sports gambling, come back to Missouri. I feel like this is a good way to raise taxes. I've seen some arguments that say, oh, well, it says it's going to go to education, but you know what's going to happen is they're going to take that $20 million it raises in education, and then they'll take it out of the education budget and blah, blah, blah. I don't care. It does raise government revenue, and there's no reason that there should be a prohibition on sports gambling. It's stupid. So I vote yes on this. I don't see a good argument why we should keep sports gambling illegal in Missouri when it's legal in states around us that are just taking the taxes that could be generated here in Missouri and just sending them to Illinois, for example. So or people are just doing it online on different websites anyway. So I don't see a good argument against this. So I'm a yes vote on Amendment 2. Amendment 3 is about abortion here in Missouri. Missouri has a very restrictive abortion law post Roe v. Wade, and this would basically legalize abortion again. And I know some people, there are arguments on both sides about this, but basically it's just about abortion legalization, whether or not you want less restrictive or more restrictive abortion law. We have restrictive abortion law already. So basically it's just, would you want the status quo, which is basically that no one in Missouri can get an abortion without some medical necessity, or do you want a more liberal abortion law? That's it. So you can vote. A yes vote on that is for abortion. A no vote is against abortion. Then this is such a Missouri amendment right here. It's so dumb. This Amendment 5 is about an Osage riverboat. So in Missouri, we have a rule about casinos. Casinos have to be built on the water. So there were a lot of boat casinos that initially were the thing, and then they built stuff like in St. Louis, for example, we have the Hollywood Casino, which is built on the Missouri River, and then you have the casino downtown, the Lumiere, which is built on the riverfront. And so it's just a silly law about where casinos can and cannot be built. I don't necessarily understand why that was the case, but it is the case. I guess there's a certain amount of permits in the Osage that are a certain amount of permits that are given out to riverboats, so this would just allow them to open up another riverboat. There's the argument against this that I saw. The only argument against it I saw was basically that the Osage tribe here in Missouri, the Osage Native Americans, were recently granted a permit for the building of a casino. And it seems like this riverboat is going to be done in a direct competition with this casino that the Osage Indians are planning on building. To me, I don't care. I think it's cool if the Indians want to build a casino. Have at it. I see no issues with this, but the same can be said for the riverboat. If someone wants to open another casino riverboat, I don't see an argument against it necessarily. Maybe I'm missing something on this. This is the one I didn't really care enough about to go into. I read a little stuff about for and against. Like I said, the only argument I saw against it is not that a riverboat casino would be bad. It's just that this seems to be done in direct competition to the Osage Native American tribe that is trying to build their own casino. Again, I'm not going to say, well, we have to protect the Native American casino because this other riverboat wants to compete. If the riverboat casino is better, people will go there. If the other casino is better, they'll go there. That's competition. I don't know what to tell you. So I voted yes, but that's just because. The two confusing ones on the ballot for Missouri are Amendment 6 and Amendment 7. Amendment 6 is a little confusing for people, so I will try to explain it because it is rather a weird amendment, and you don't know if it's good or bad. Basically, Amendment 6 would make it so that the sheriff pension plan here in Missouri, I guess the sheriffs have a pension in Missouri, or some sheriffs have a pension, and as well as it sounded like some prosecuting attorneys who maybe represent districts have a part of this justice pension plan. What this amendment would do, if you vote yes, it will make a $3 court fee that is added to the court fees that you already pay if you go to trial. And the $3 basically directly goes to fund this pension plan for the sheriffs. Now, I'll give it for and against this argument real quick. I'll try and give both sides. The argument for this from basically the sheriffs say that this would be a good thing because the $3 would be generated at trials, which would alleviate the taxpayer from having to fund this pension, because the pension would fund, I'm not going to say it's going to fund 100% of itself, but a large portion of it would go to fund the pension plan based on the amount of trials that you have. And this would be good for the taxpayers here in Missouri who are funding this pension already. So that's the argument for it. The sheriffs are basically saying, hey, this $3 will go to bolster our pension, and it also helps the taxpayer out because the taxpayer winds up not footing the bill for the pension. It's a fine argument. Now, the argument against it that I've read, there's a lot of those places like Equal Justice Center, Action Justice Now, all these organizations that are criminal reform organizations or places that are trying to work to change laws. There's reasons why they're coming out against it. And it's not a bad argument. I will say that. And so here's their argument of why this is a bad idea. It's a bad idea because it incentivizes the sheriffs to make more arrests and take more people to trial so that they bolster their pension plan. Imagine that it's like if a cop was given a bonus every time he wrote a ticket. Okay, so imagine you write a ticket, but your salary as a police officer was paid by a percentage of tickets that you wrote. So you write a ticket and you get 5%. How many more tickets would you write? There's a good argument about this. Well, are you incentivized then to just find more crime and write tickets? This is a great argument on that side because you don't want to incentivize the police to misuse the law for their own personal benefit. So my thinking on this amendment is that I do not believe if you are taking someone to trial, it's a little different than writing tickets. So you're going to trial, typically, you're not going to go to trial if you're an attorney or part of the sheriff's department. You're not going to take something to trial if you are not sure of a conviction. This is just the way it works. If you're not sure that you're going to win, typically you don't go to trial, or at least you don't have a good possibility. The only reason they do this is because they believe they're going to win. In a lot of cases, if you, for example, are taken to trial, you're not paying the court costs if you win. So you're not going to pay the court costs if you win because you might be able to have the other people pay the court costs. For example, if you're arrested and you're found innocent, I do not believe, and you'll have to fact check me on this because this is just a belief. I don't know this for sure. But my understanding is you're not paying the court costs if you are taken to court and found innocent, something like that. I believe that is the case. I'm not 100% sure. And I know in a lot of civil suits, if you win, the person who loses has to pay the court costs. That's also built into it. So, for example, if I sue you, but you win, I have to pay your court costs because that's just the way it works. I lost the trial. I also am paying the court costs. That's kind of the way it works. And I believe that's the case. You'll have to fact check me here. So my thinking on Amendment 6 is that I do not believe that the sheriffs are going to be incentivized to take people to trial just to bolster a pension. I believe it's going to be something that it's going to be a benefit that they're going to do to the pension to alleviate the taxpayer of some of the responsibility for their pension plan, which I do think the sheriff should have a pension plan, and I think that's a good thing. So I voted yes on this because I believe that it will be a good idea in the long run, and I do not believe it's going to be used in any miscarriage of justice as though the sheriffs are going to arrest more people based on their pension. I don't think that's the case. Again, if this was about tickets, I would say the exact opposite. Because, for example, you walk down the street. First of all, this is a great argument against how many laws there are about nonsense. You walk down the street, the cop can write you a ticket because you jaywalked or he said you littered or you jaywalked or you were in the park after dark or you were doing whatever. There are a lot of things that are actually probably ticketable offenses that most cops are like, I don't want to write a ticket for this. It's stupid. Just stop doing what you're doing. And I think if you incentivize police officers to write tickets, they get a percentage of it, then they're going to write just a lot of nonsense tickets. And this makes people not respect the law. The law should be enforced, but it should only be enforced because people respect it and it's serious. You can't make stupid things criminal or illegal or ticketable and then expect people to respect the law because you've made a bunch of nonsense illegal. So if this was tickets, I would be against it, but it's for trials, and trials are different. So I think it's a yes. I don't think the sheriffs are going to abuse this at the expense of their pensions. But that's kind of what it's about. So you have a little understanding. I hope I was clear about that. I kind of rambled a little bit. But then you have Amendment 7. This is the other one that's a mixed bag. And this one, I'll tell you, I do not like. And here's why. It does a couple things. It does two important things. So it's got good and bad. The two important things that it's talking about is the number one thing on the ballot in this measure is that it would make it illegal for illegal immigrants to vote in elections. Okay, sounds fine. That seems good. Number two is it eliminates alternative methods of voting like ranked choice voting. Okay, so here's my issue with this. These issues have nothing to do with one another. Nothing at all. The Republicans, and again, I'm telling you this is someone who will vote Republican basically down ticket. The Republicans are lying about this, and that's why I'm going to vote no on it, because I do not respect what they're doing right now. I feel like it's not good. What they're doing is saying it's very important that we pass this amendment to make it so that it's illegal for illegals to vote. It's already illegal. It's already illegal for illegals to vote. They're not allowed to do it. And again, if you want to put it in an amendment to make it in the Missouri Constitution, that's fine. But that's not really what's happening right here. They're campaigning like they're trying to make it illegal for illegals to vote. But then why are you putting the second thing in there? Because all the Democrats who are arguing against this are talking about ranked choice voting. They're saying they're saying Republicans are lying. They're lying by using this as a cover to get rid of ranked choice voting. And I believe that is absolutely true. I do think the Republicans are being disingenuous running on this issue. I do think that it's an attempt to just get rid of ranked choice voting. I'm not saying I'm in favor of ranked choice voting. I'm not saying I think it's a great idea. I think it's a fine idea. In practice, it hasn't worked out so well. In theory, it could be good. You got to play with it. But that's what this issue is about. This issue is about ranked choice voting and whether or not it should just be made completely illegal in the Missouri Constitution. But the Republicans aren't running about that. But that's what this is about. And so to me, what I don't respect is somebody pretending one thing and then doing the other. And the Republicans are running about the immigration part of this because that's a hot button issue. And they feel like it's easy to pass because most people, Missouri's a Republican state, Republicans will look at that and say, well, I don't want illegals to vote. It's already illegal. It's already illegal. They can't do it. It's already a crime. I'm not saying you can't put it in the Constitution, but I'm saying that's not what this amendment is about. This amendment is about outlawing ranked choice voting. All ranked choice voting does, by the way, is, for example, if we have three people running, we have a Democrat, a Republican, and a Libertarian. And I want the Libertarian to win. I vote for the Libertarian. I would put, number one on him. I'd look at the Republican. I'd put 2 on him. I'd put the Democrat. I'd put number 3 on him. And basically what it does is it looks for somebody to get to a majority, the way I understand it. There are different systems in different places, but the way I would do it is it would look for somebody, not to get a plurality of the vote, meaning the majority of the vote, but actually get over the threshold of 50. So let's say we add all 3 of them up, and nobody gets over 50% of the vote. Well, then the guy who's in last place. So there's 3 people here. Let's say they all got relatively even scores, but the Libertarian's in last place. So everyone who voted for that guy first, since he's in last place, they then go to their second choice. So all the Libertarian votes, everyone who voted for this guy first, then melt away, and they get distributed to either the Republican or the Democrat, so that until someone gets over 51% of the vote. And so the reason why this is good is it allows for third-party viability. That's the argument for ranked choice voting. So I do not believe, I voted no on this issue only because I believe it's disingenuous on the Republicans to not have a real conversation about ranked choice voting and pretend that this is about illegal immigration. Again, you can vote for it, and you're not going to be wrong, but just understand that it's not about illegal immigration. It is about ranked choice voting. And that's fine, so as long as you understand that going in, and you understand what ranked choice voting is and why sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. You have arguments for and against it. I'm not going to make that argument. All I'm saying is I voted no because I feel like the Republican, all the arguments you read online are about this illegal immigration thing, and it's just not what the issue really is. And the Democrats have been very honest about this. They're saying they're using this as a weapon, and I believe that is true. So I voted no, but just understand what the issue is going in. It's got 2 things: illegal immigrants, illegal to vote, and it outlaws ranked choice voting in the state of Missouri, which, is, like I said, they put those 2 things together to try and outlaw ranked choice voting by undermining the comprehension of most of the people who are going to read the bill, who won't read past line 1. And so that's just understand that going in, and you'll be fine. The other one, they have a Prop A. I don't know if this is, I think this is a Missouri-wide proposition, which raises the minimum wage. That's obviously a no from me. Minimum wage laws are ridiculous. We should abolish all of them. They're bad for the economy. They're bad for unemployment, especially black people. I don't know if you know this, but the number one thing that happens when you raise the you raise the minimum wage is that the unemployment rate among black Americans goes up. And there's a correlation there that cannot be denied. And yet people think that it's good. It'll help people in poor communities. It doesn't. It really harms poor communities, which tend to be disproportionately black in this country. And so I think minimum wage laws are harmful to black people. That's really what it comes down to. It's not that white people aren't affected, but they disproportionately harm black Americans, especially in lower income areas in the United States. Minimum wage laws, you really could make a case, minimum wage laws themselves are racist. But I think it's a stupid case to make, but it is actually true because it negatively impacts black people more than white people. So anyway, we are going to leave it there for the day. I don't really care who you vote for. I'm not going to tell you have to go out and vote for Donald Trump, but I really hope no matter who you vote for, that you really look at the issues and you decide based on that. Don't base on policy. I like Donald Trump because he's a big F you to the man. That's not a good reason to vote for Donald Trump. I like Kamala Harris because I think it'd be good for a woman to be president. That's not a good reason to vote for Kamala Harris. Look at their policies. Who will be better for America based on their policies? Vote with your mind. Don't vote with your heart. Vote with your mind. Use your reason and your logic to make a good, rational pick. That's all I'm going to say about that. I will catch you guys. I'm going to be on vacation this next week, but I will be making a video regardless. So I'll see you guys. I will be, you know what, I'm going to be in the Bahamas for my birthday, which is coming up here. And, you know, who knows? I'll be spending the election there. Maybe I won't even know what happens until I get back. Who knows? I might just stay off and come back to Kamala's America. You never know. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. I will catch you guys next Friday. Have a good week.